Disneyland can now legally build up to 300 feet tall, and not just once, up to four separate landmark structures. That's not add a new ride tall. This is change the skyline of the resort tall. But here's the twist, it doesn't apply everywhere, and Disney still hasn't announced a single 300-foot attraction. So today, let's decode what the rule actually allows, and then I'll give you 5 IPs that make the most sense if Disney ever decides to spend these 4 golden tickets. First, Disneyland Forward isn't an exciting leaked ride list. It's a zoning and planning update that gives Disney flexibility to place theme park attractions, hotels, dining, and retail across its resort footprint over time without having to re-entitle the entire property every time plans evolve. Anaheim approved Disneyland Forward on May 7, 2024, and Disneyland framed it as a long term blueprint, not a promise of specific attractions. In addition, Disneyland Forward legally requires Disney to invest a minimum of $1.9 billion over 10 years for theme park attractions, lodging, entertainment, shopping, and dining. So when you hear Disneyland Forward allows something, translate that as the city will allow it if Disney chooses to build it, not this is what's happening starting tomorrow. Now, the headline. Anaheim's updated plan allows up to 4 structural thematic elements to reach 300 feet in the resort's theme park district. That's a big deal because most of what Disneyland builds today sits far below that ceiling. For comparison, the Matterhorn sits at about 147 feet, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout sits at 183 feet, Cinderella Castle in the Magic Kingdom is 189 feet. Even the tallest attraction in all of the Disney parks, Expedition Everest and Animal Kingdom, is a bit under 200 feet. So 300 feet is a different league. You're not just building a ride, you're building something that becomes an icon for the entire resort and the Disney parks worldwide. Here's the part most people miss. This doesn't mean Disney can drop a 300-foot icon anywhere it owns. The Toy Story parking area, which is planned to be the big development site near Harbor and Catella, has its own planning rules, and Anaheim's documents show different, lower height allowances than the 300-foot landmark allowance in the core theme park district. What does this mean? If Disney ever builds a true 300-footer, the most likely home is inside the existing resort core. Disneyland Park, DCA, or the West Side expansion zone between Disneyland Drive and Walnut Street, just not the Toy Story lot expansion zone. Think of these like scarce Skyline level icon slots. If Disney ever uses the full allowance, you can imagine one major icon tied to Disneyland Park, one tied to DCA, and potentially 2 more tied to the West Side growth zones. But the key is scarcity. If you only get 4 Skyline level icons, you don't waste them on something that doesn't read from a distance or doesn't anchor a whole land identity. Disney has not announced 300-foot attractions or assigned IP to them. This is purely a speculative what would make sense exercise based on scale, story, and what Disney has already built elsewhere. Frozen is one of the few Disney IPs where a tall icon feels natural. Ice spires, mountains, and ice palace that can glow at night. Frozen also has major land investment globally, like World of Frozen at Hong Kong Disneyland and Disney Adventure World in Paris. However, their respective ice palaces don't exceed 100 feet and 118 feet currently. Speculative ride concept. A multi level ice mountain show building, dark ride scenes, a big musical set piece, maybe even height used for a dramatic reveal without being a pure thrill tower. A possible thrill ride concept could be an ice sled style coaster on the scale of Expedition Everest. Why it would be a 300-foot candidate? Theming a land and attraction around Frozen is an easy sell. Elsa's Ice Palace would be on the scale of 500 feet if it were real, and the global Disney parks lack a Frozen icon at this scale. Zootopia's identity is vertical city scale, districts stacked on districts. Disney has already proven the land works. Zootopia opened at Shanghai Disney Resort in 2023. Shanghai Zootopia skyline doesn't exceed 200 feet, so an Anaheim version would be more massive in scale. Speculative ride concept. A big ticket dark ride chase inside a towering city hall or skyline structure with layered scenes and possible vertical transitions. Why it would be a 300-foot candidate? Zootopia's towering skyline is an obvious candidate to fill out the 300-foot limit with a glowing neon skyline at night that houses an action packed thrill ride. Wakanda is already present in DCA's Avengers campus through entertainment and storytelling, but it doesn't have its own immersive place yet. A skyline icon that says, "You're in Wakanda now." Speculative icon, a tall golden city spire or mountain like structure with Wakandan geometry to anchor another Avengers campus expansion or its own completely separate land. Why it would be a 300-foot candidate? Wakanda is futuristic, regal, and architectural. It benefits from scale. Indiana Jones is already a Disney park legend. Indiana Jones Adventure opened in 1995, but it's mostly hidden inside a show building. A 300-foot version flips the equation. The icon becomes the lure. Speculative icon, a giant Forbidden Mountain temple, carved rock lines, collapsed ruins, big enough to hide a massive ride inside while reading as a true landmark. Why it would be a 300-foot candidate? Indies adventure stories love monoliths, temples, peaks, ancient things you're not supposed to enter until you do. Peter Pan is classic Disneyland DNA and still a major evergreen story in the parks. A 300-foot Neverland icon would give Disneyland a fantasy skyline that isn't just another castle. Speculative icon, a towering Neverland peak or Skull Rock style mountain that becomes the nighttime silhouette for a mini land. Why it would be a 300-foot candidate? Neverland is the promise of flight, and height sells that promise instantly. If I had to pick the two safest bets for a Disneyland Forward mega icon, it's Frozen and Zootopia. Not because I like them most, but because they're massive IP hits that Anaheim hasn't yet utilized, and they're the kind of worlds Disney has already built as lands elsewhere, so they can be built to scale cleanly into a skyline level statement in Anaheim. So I'll end with the real question. If you only get 4 skyline level icons, what do you spend them on? Frozen, Zootopia, a Wakanda Spire, an Indiana Jones Mountain, Neverland at Night, something else? Drop your 4 picks in the comments and tell me where you'd place them. Disneyland, DCA, or the West Side Growth Zones. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be putting together deep dive speculations on what a Frozen attraction and a Zootopia attraction might look like if they took advantage of the 300-foot scale in Anaheim. I'll see you in the next video.